introduction. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present Runaway Creek and also what we are doing. Just to give you an
Hey,
idea
Wilbur,
about,
can you hold on 1 second, please? Mine is nuts.
can you hear me?
All right, I'm just trying to get this over so you can see Wilbur here. Now I might have to adjust the microphone 1 second.
Okay.
Hey, Wilbur, can you go ahead and talk now, please?
Okay, can you hear me good?
Yeah, let me just increase the volume.
Okay.
Okay, sir, you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much to Miss Cindy for giving that wonderful introduction about Runaway Creek and Belize. Indeed, it's something that we are very passionate as a staff here at Belize doing conservation. Just to give you an idea, where is Belize and where is Selva Maya? We are located in Central America, and the Selva Maya, which is the translation for the Maya forest in honor to the Mayan civilization. This forest is the second largest in the Americas, second to the Amazon forest. It encompasses 3 countries, which is Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. And Runaway Creek is a major part of that forest. It is located within the Maya Forest Corridor. If you're seeing the screen, you could see a big arrow. And it is Runaway Creek that's located at the middle of the Maya Forest Corridor. So what is happening here is that there's a lot of development with farming and also the building of villages, towns, and cities that it has disrupted the corridor. There's no corridor for the animals to pass through. So Runaway Creek is the core, and it's the only reserve that is under protection. Next slide. So what we are doing at Runaway Creek and with our staff, we are doing diverse things. And one of the main emphasis is the study of birds. We have also done archaeology and discovery of paintings in Runaway Creek. We have done wildlife research with various mammals, reptiles. We have explored caves, and also there's a lot of biodiversity and forests. So what we're going to do now, each staff is going to talk about a topic that you can see on the screen. Next slide. Liberato Pop, who is our main expert in birds, he's going to talk about what we do with research, bird banding, mist netting, and I will pass it on to Mr. Pop. Next slide.
Hello, good evening. Here at Runaway Creek, we are one that do bird banding here. So we run a station called MOSI, Monitoreo de Sobrevivencia Invernal, and there are about 250 banding stations within the US, Belize, and the rest of South America. So Runaway is one of the 5th MOSI that we are running. In Belize, there are other MOSI stations. And this year is our 6th pulse that we are currently collecting. So we hope to get interesting birds. Next slide. In this slide, one of FWC staff, Reynald Cal, is explaining the importance of mosey, bird banding, and how to collect data on these species. Next slide. One of the most important aspects when it comes to operating banding stations, all of the trainees have to go through certain trainings. Like here, Kayla is setting up MISNET. She's teaching other students how to set up MISNETs properly, and the way how to have them secure for the night. Next slide. Bird banding requires a lot of training, and I recently earned my bander's certificate, and I'm here. I am explaining to other students, staff members, the importance of collecting data using different techniques, how to collect aging, handle birds, assessing birds, and then releasing them safely as well. Next slide. And again, handling bird is one of the most important part of bird banding. Also recording, collecting accurate data in the field. So this is one of our important training that we at the banding stations take it seriously. Next slide. Also, at our banding station, we have to make sure that the correct size of band is applied on the bird tarsus. So by doing that, trainees, banders, and so forth has to make sure that the correct size is being applied on the bird's leg by using the leg gauge. Next slide. We handling birds appropriately, making sure that the bander or trainee can successfully remove bands from the string, and also applying the band on the bird's tarsus, and making sure that person records data properly, and also having that bird released with that making sure that bird is released into the wild safe and sound. Yeah. Next slide. Right. So I will give the opportunity to Kayla to take over the slides now.
Thank you, Gato. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Hartwell, and I am the research director at Runaway Creek. MODIS, maybe some of you are familiar with MODIS. It's the word MODIS is Latin for movement, and it's a internationally wide wildlife tracking network that uses radio telemetry. And we have been involved with attaching these tiny, super lightweight nano tags on birds, but there's also been studies using the same technology on bats, I think dragonflies, butterflies, any of it's very successful with any of the smaller migrating species because of the how lightweight these devices are. So our project, we have been we just completed our second year. We have successfully tagged 21 different migratory birds over the last 2 seasons. Can everybody hear me okay? I feel like I'm hearing some background, but everything's good. Okay, great. And this has allowed us to track their migration to North America. And next slide, please. There's several stations that are operating in Belize that have MODIS towers, but we're actually the first organization that is deploying the MODIS tags on birds to track them. And this last April, we successfully tagged 5 different catbirds, and it was fascinating because we were able to track them. They pinged towers during their migration. They all took a route that pinged them in Texas, and then half of the catbirds went directly straight up the middle of the US to the Midwest, and then the other half went to the Northeast, which was really fascinating for us. Next slide. So of the 21 birds that we have put MODIS tags on, we are kind of opportunistic about what species we are going to attach the nano tags. So far, we've put tags on 7 different species. So in addition to the catbirds, we have tagged hooded warblers, as you can see here. And the tags are kind of like little backpacks or harnesses. Liberato, who was just speaking, he has a lot of experience in attaching these, and they don't harm the bird in any way. So in addition to the gray catbirds and the hooded warblers, we've also tagged prothonotary warblers, northern water thrush, trying to think what else, ovenbird, yellow-breasted chat, and I think a common yellow throat as well. Next slide, please. And part of our MODIS project is to involve the
My bad.
And some guy who's not.
I just got a message that the host muted me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. As I was saying, we involve students from the neighboring communities around Runaway Creek and teach them the importance of migration and preserving the different stopover locations and the breeding grounds, as well as their wintering grounds. Dr. Wilbur will talk about our community outreach later on, but for now, Gato will take over again. Next slide, please.
These are a few of our resident birds. This is a gray-headed tanager. We have about 14 tanagers, some including the migratory species that winter here in Belize. So this is one of our most captured birds at Runaway Creek, as you guys can see here. Next slide. We have a few species of hummingbirds. We have about 14 species of hummingbirds. One hummingbird that we usually get during the migration, ruby-throated hummingbird. So we are privileged to have this amount of species of hummingbirds. This is the rufous tail hummingbird. It's a resident species. So next slide. This is one of our most beautiful resident bird that we have here at Runaway Creek and in Belize. This is a royal flycatcher. This is a male, and the female is more of our orange, bright gold crest. So we are privileged to be banding these species to understand their movements, behavior, and understanding the habitat structure that they live in. Right, next. This is a Kentucky warbler. We have been recording one of these Kentuckys that have been returning to Runaway Creek for 5 consecutive years now. So we are proud to say that Runaway Creek is one of their home range when they're returning back to winter in Belize. So, and there are other species like Wilson's warbler, American redstart, few northern water thrush that are returning back to Runaway Creek. Next slide. This is a red-capped manakin male, one of the residents that we have at Runaway Creek as well. We have 2 species of manakins, and these guys are pretty interesting birds when they are molting. So it takes 3 years for these manakins to develop into the adult phase. Next slide, please. Also, handling birds at Runaway Creek is most important. This is one of our mutmuts. It's called a lessons mutmut. It's one of our largest mutmuts we have in Belize. We have 3 species of mutmuts. The other one, the killbill mutmut, is mostly found in the Maya Mountains, in the higher hills. And we also have the totem mutmut here at Runaway Creek, which are interesting birds to look at and also study them. Yeah. Next slide. So wood creepers, we have a variety of wood creepers, woodpeckers, and this one is showing off its wing. And it's important to conserve habitat for wood creepers, as they're the ones who scrape through a forest and looking for insects and moving around. So yes, next slide. Another picture of the royal flycatcher here in the Banders group at our station at Runaway Creek. And it's important to have these habitat conserved for them. The Runaway Creek has about 250 to 300 species of birds, and there's a total of approximately 600 species for the entire country of Belize. Next slide. So I will give the mic to Mr. Wilbur.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's very important to have a link from research to education. And many times as researchers, we tend to just collect data, write a paper and do publications. But here at Runaway Creek, one of our main pillars is education. And we have been doing environmental education in 2 villages very close to Runaway Creek. And we have done that for many years since Birds Without Borders was established. But recently we have been trying to bring the kids together to form what is called a bird club, and also to engage them in doing having that first experience with bird banding and mist netting. I think that's one of our biggest responsibilities as researchers, to pass on that information, that joy, that knowledge to younger kids. Next slide. This is a picture that shows how young kids from the nearby communities come and join researchers such as Liberato and the whole staff of Runaway Creek. And they have a first-hand experience to actually see how we are doing bird banding and mist netting, to look at the bands and have a first-hand experience. Next slide. We also do different activities. We try to instill in them the joy and knowledge of gaining knowledge of doing bird watching. And for that, we get up very early in the morning and do bird watching with those kids and teach them how to use the bird books and also how to use binoculars. Next slide. It's very interesting how to to see a young boy trying to see through binoculars and also with a scope, because you know that you really have to fine tune everything. But once we manage to spot a bird, and you know birds are moving all around, so what we do, we walk around the village with binoculars and the scope and try to teach them and train them how to use binoculars and appreciate birds. Next slide. This is done in 2 communities nearby Runaway Creek. And in January, we're going to restart or jumpstart the project again, because we don't do it every weekend. We do it once a month, because we are very short staff, and we try to keep them engaged in bird watching. Next slide. This is a picture that I really love to see, because this is a very young boy. He is about 6 years old, and he has binoculars. If you can notice on his neck, has a very big binoculars, and Liberato is showing him the bird that he just saw through the binoculars. But unfortunately, sometimes by the time he spots a bird with the binoculars, it takes more than a minute. So he prefers to use only the bird book and his own eyes. So that's why the more we do this, the better for them, because they learn how to use binoculars. Next slide. Also, we do classroom activities. They do a lot of painting in the classroom, and we have a part-time environmental educator that really helps us design a plan, objectives, and activities. And you could see the joy in the faces of the young kids of the nearby villages. Next slide. Also, this is a photo that we took with the motos research that we did last 2 years. These are people from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the community of Mahogany Heights and Democracia joining our research station while doing the motos research. Next slide. Now, Runaway Creek has a lot of things to offer. And one of the main things that we have is the Mayan civilization that really used Runaway Creek and the caves. Now I am going to call on Reynold Cal. He is the manager of Runaway Creek, and he's going to talk about the Mayan civilization, archaeology, and the use of the caves in Runaway Creek. Take it on, Reynold.
Okay, good night, everyone. And it's a privilege for me to be part of this presentation. My name is Ray Cal, and I'm at Runaway Creek for 23 years. So it's quite a while. And I've heard you, some of you saying your favorite birds. My favorite bird is the white hawk. It's a forest bird. So to change the topic a little bit from birds to the rich history of Runaway Creek Nature Reserve, the human history, it has a very interesting human history, the ancient Mayas. So before I go further, another part of the history of Runaway Creek, where the name came from, is from the slavery days, the runaways, the maroons, they were called. They were running away. They were hiding in the karst hills because there are a lot of habitats at Runaway Creek, and it's the karst terrain, the limestone terrains that are riddled with caves and tunnels. So that was where the runaways found refuge, but they left very little evidence because they were traveling very light. But the ancient Mayas left a lot of evidence. As you can see, some of the pictures here, the ancient Mayas, the range of their vessels here that we keep finding, their potteries, their tools, and some human remains as well. It ranges from the pre-classic to the post-classic period. So it was about up to maybe 900 AD. That was their time in these caves here. So you can see some of these vessels, they are brightly painted. The paint is still very bright. So it's quite mysterious and interesting how these, after so many 100 years, and they're still there at Runaway Creek. So let's stay on this slide. Sorry, I just want to all right, so you can see the middle picture, the top middle picture. It shows a spider monkey, and shows that the spider monkeys had been at Runaway Creek hundreds of years before. And you see the center one at the bottom. That was where it's a jaguar painting. It's a crude jaguar painting. It was painted by the Mayas around 300 AD. It was on a cave wall, on a limestone wall. And the archaeologists told us that they did some testing, and they said that it was the first painting discovered in Belize. And it was the 9th Maya painting discovered in Mesoamerica. So it was very, very interesting. Okay, so we haven't found any ancient city close to Runaway Creek. So we think, the archaeologists think too, that they just go to the caves to do ceremonies, especially to pray to their gods. And especially this painting here, the jaguar painting, it has 9 dots on its body. That is signifying the 9 levels of the underworld, because the jaguar, they consider the jaguar as one of their main god, and he was the god of the underworld in the night. So very, very interesting. Okay, now next slide, please. The ancient Mayas had a lot of gods, more than 100 gods. They believe that everything have a spirit. You see the hole on that vessel there? That was when they finished using that vessel. So they made a little hole on the vessel so that nobody will use it anymore. So that hole is called the kill hole, or to kill the spirit. Next slide, please. See, these are very, very interesting vessels. The archaeologists said that these type of vessels came from Calakmul, that is in Mexico. It was a major city. So there's evidence that there was a lot of trading happening in their days. Next slide, please. This one we call extra big pot. It is about 3 feet across. So we always wonder how they took it in that cave, because these are very fragile vessels. They are made from clay potteries. And all of these vessels that we are seeing the pictures here, they are all from Runaway Creek. Next slide, please. More vessels. Most of the caves have pottery shards at Runaway Creek. Next slide, please. See, those are the vessels there. We just document them. We work with the archaeology department. We take pictures, GPS readings, and we do constant patrols to keep them from being looted. So we safeguard them. Next slide, please. That is one of their tool. It's a chert, and looks like a big spearhead. It's right under the jaguar painting. You see the jaguar painting in the background. Next slide, please. That's a vessel that we call painted vase. You can see the painting is still very bright. and it's a tunnel that's hard to get to. You have to crawl to get there. Next slide, please. There was a development close to this cave where we found this incense burner. So we got permission from the archaeology department to get it, and we put it in our office to safeguard it. But all artifacts are property of the government of Belize. So we are just safekeeping it for the moment. Next slide, please. And this was one of their major tools. This is a grinding stone or a metate. This was what they used to grind the corn with. So it was one of their major tools. Next slide, please. Okay, this one is not in Runaway Creek. This is just a picture of a site in Belize. It's called Shunantunich. It is a main tourist destination. So it's just a picture to show you how the ancient Maya cities looks like. So far, we haven't found any at Runaway Creek, but there's a lot of presence of the ancient Mayas there. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, the karst terrain is riddled with caves and tunnels, so I'll pass it on to Kayla to talk about the caves.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Well, it just stopped as I spoke, but there's a ferruginous pygmy owl calling right outside my window. So maybe it'll start calling again and you'll get the opportunity to hear it. They're very adorable little tiny owls. Okay, at Runaway, as Ray mentioned, it's kind of dominated by these limestone karst hills, and a lot of them have extensive caves, and we've done over the years a lot of exploration, and most of them have pottery shards, evidence of Maya occupation or evidence of Maya being in there. Next slide. And now I wanted to talk about the wildlife, the diverse wildlife that we have at Runaway. I'll also briefly talk about some of the different research projects that we have going on. Next slide. Thanks, Danny. So here's an example of some of the wildlife that can be found at Runaway. On the, I guess, the left side, left top, you have 3 different cat species. There's a total of 5 species of wild cats that are in Belize and are found at Runaway Creek. At the top there, the spotted one, that is a margay. It's kind of about the size of a house cat. They're very arboreal, so it's actually rare to get camera trap images of them walking on the ground because they spend most of their time up in the trees. The next one, going counterclockwise, is a puma, also locally known here in Belize as a red tiger. They're a lot smaller in Belize, or this area of Mesoamerica, compared to in North America. You all have much larger pumas or cougars. Down here, they're much smaller, maybe around 60 pounds, and they have this red coloration to them. And so locally, they're known as red tigers. And then on the bottom left there is a jaguarundi. They are also about the size of a house cat. There's 2 different color morphs of them. This is pictured here is one of the dark morphs, and then there's also a reddish lighter colored one. In the center is a young howler monkey, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then on the right, there is the Bard's tapir, which is the national animal of Belize. Next slide. Here we have the 9-banded armadillo. This is a nocturnal species. It's probably one of the top prey species for jaguars and pumas. It's a very important source of prey for the large cats. Next slide. Here is the striped, or also known as brown basilisk lizard. It's also known as the Jesus Christ lizard because it's able to run across water just on its back legs. It can run a very long distance across the water. So it's called the Jesus Christ lizard. And this is an agouti. It's one of the larger rodent species. It's also an important food species for the big cats. Next slide. And here is a photo of coatis, a group of coatis, which are related to raccoons. Females and the young will live in large groups. They're very social, whereas males tend to be solitary. These are very social, highly intelligent species that we find at Runaway. Next slide. And here again is the Bard's tapir, the national animal of Belize. Locally, it's also called a mountain cow. And this is the subject of Dr. Wilbur's research. He did his PhD studying tapir in and around Runaway Creek and studied their movements, their home range, and also the importance of watering holes for their survival. Next slide. There's 2 species of crocodile in Belize, the saltwater crocodile, and then the Morlet's crocodile, which is the one that we encounter or see at Runaway Creek. We are currently working with some other scientists to study cave use of crocodiles at Runaway Creek. Next slide. Here is a green iguana, although this one doesn't look very green because it's a mature breeding male green iguana. And so they have this beautiful burnt orange color during the breeding season. And my personal favorite, of course, here is some spider monkeys, a mother and her infant. There's 2 different primate species in Belize, the spider monkeys and the howler monkeys. And as Cindy mentioned, spider monkeys were the focus of my research. They live in very large groups of up to 50 individuals, or even more possibly, but they live in kind of a unique form of social organization called fission fusion. So they're very similar. They kind of co-evolved the same thing as chimpanzees. So they're never, as a group, they're never all together as a kind of cohesive unit. Instead, individuals are able to move around and forage independently of one another. They're also very, very intelligent and social. Next slide. Here's a photo of a juvenile spider monkey. They're completely arboreal, so they never come down to the ground. They get all the food and water that they need from the trees. They're primarily fruit eaters. Next slide. And here is a photo of a howler monkey. And so in Belize, howler monkeys are far more common than spider monkeys, but we find both of them at Runaway Creek. They differ in many in many aspects of their behavior and their ecology. But they're able to coexist at Runaway. And howler monkeys, well, they're known for their loud call, but they're also primarily feed on leaves instead of fruit. But they're also arboreal, so they hardly ever come down to the ground. Next slide. And here, this is my a personal favorite individual. This is Fugly. She was a very old female. I don't know why I now regret calling her Fugly, but she's a great mother, and I got a lot of interesting information from her from studying her and her family group for so long. Spider monkeys are very devoted mothers, and they'll carry and nurse their offspring for 3 to 5 years. They're really devoted mothers. Next slide. And here's another photo of a howler monkey. And as you know, they're famous for their very loud call. If anybody's been to Central or South America and have heard howler monkeys, it's really impressive. Next slide. And here is a stunning photograph of a jaguar that was captured by this photographer, Jamie and Percy. And this is a photograph taken at Runaway Creek. And it took about 4 years of trying to get the perfect shot of a jaguar passing through one of the caves at Runaway. And this particular jaguar we named Romeo because he was photographed on February 14th on Valentine's Day. And ironically, he also has a little heart rosette spot on his side. Next slide. Jaguars are, they're really, because of their unique coat pattern, so each individual, just like fingerprints, their rosette pattern is unique to them. And because of this, we're able to track individuals over a long period of time. And at Runaway, we have been camera trapping since 2009, 2008. So we've been able to successfully monitor the population of jaguars coming through Runaway Creek for quite a while now. And we have a substantial amount of information about the population. This is a female. She was first sighted in 2018, and we know that she's had at least 2 cubs since we have been monitoring her. Next slide. And here you have, we call him Big Eye because he has kind of his spot pattern above one of his eyes makes him look like he has a big eyebrow. He is one of the most photographed jaguars at Runaway Creek. He was first sighted in Danny. Please go back.
I'm a flicker.
He was first sighted in 2017 and is a dominant male. Next slide. And here is the cat with many names, a puma. Here in Belize, we call them pumas. This is 2 pumas passing through one of the caves. And next slide. And here's an adorable picture of a mama puma and her 2 kittens. And now I'll pass it back to Ray to finish off with the flora.
Okay, it's me again. I will talk a little bit about flora, which is very important for, you know, the fruits, the seeds, the flowers, for birds, you know, hummingbirds. And in Runaway Creek, we have quite a number of habitats. As I said, we have broadleaf, we have pine savanna, and we have the riparian forest. So all of those have, you know, some different species of plants. Some are in the broadleaf. We have emergent trees. They bear fruits, seeds, epiphytes by the wetlands. Those provide beautiful flowers for the hummingbirds. We have bromeliads, fungi, a lot of palms, and they are very beautiful, and they are used by wildlife. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a very rare flower at Runaway Creek that we call wild ginger. It bears flowers maybe once a year. So very beautiful. Next slide. This one is I think most of you know hibiscus, but this is a forest one. It doesn't open. It's called pepper hibiscus. It's like that. After a few days, then the flowers drop down. A lot of hummingbirds go for those. Next slide. This one is called Indian redhead. Again, this is a very beautiful flower in the forest. Next slide. This one is an orchid. It's an air plant. It's not a parasitic plant. It's just, it needs that little height to survive. This is called a rat-tail orchid. You can see the leaf there. It's round like a rat tail. That's beautiful flowers. And the orchids do not flower all together. They are just random. Some are flowering, some are fruiting. So it's different time that you can see the beautiful flowers. Next slide. This one is a morning glory flower. It's usually when there's a disturbance, maybe a fire or hurricane, then these are pioneer plant species. But of course, the hummingbirds love these flowers. Next slide. And this one is very, it's beautiful, and it's also our national flower, Belize's national flower. This is the black orchid. It's a little beautiful little orchid, and again, it flowers at any time of the year. It has no special season. Next slide. This one is St. John's wort. It's a beautiful flower in the savanna. You will see this flowering in the pine savanna. Very beautiful flowers. The bees loved it as well. Next slide. This one is a fungus. I am not really sure of the name of this, but it's very beautiful. Next slide. Another fungus here. It's a mushroom. It bears this bluish color. It's always on the ground. This is in the broadleaf forest. Next slide. This one, a lot of people say that the pine savanna is a wasteland, but it is actually the opposite, because it has more species than the broadleaf. A lot of little flowering plants. This is a little plant in the savanna, and I am not too sure of the name of this species here, but it can be found in the pine savanna. Next slide. This one is a passion flower. Again, this is a savanna flower. It's very beautiful. You will see it early in the morning like this, but when the sun gets hot, it usually folds up. Next slide. This one is a terrestrial orchid. This is also the savanna orchid, it's called. It can be found in the pine savanna. It likes sandy soil. And this one doesn't grow on trees. It grows on the ground. And these flowers throughout the season, at any time. I saw just a couple of days ago, beautiful flowers. Next slide. And this is our last slide here. This is blue morpho, one of our beautiful butterflies in Belize, and it can be found in Runaway Creek. You see its undulating flight on the trails, and it's in our logo because on Dr. Gilbert Bose's last visit, he was the one that came up with the funds to purchase Runaway Creek. On his last visit in Runaway Creek in 2017, a blue morpho was following us on the trail. And when he arrived at the cave, the blue morpho perched on his back for about 30 seconds. It really meant a lot to all of us. And a few months after, Dr. Bose passed away. So we believe that it was his guardian spirit. So that's why it's in our logo. It's called Blue Morpho. Okay, so next slide. I'll pass it on to Miss Cindy to say our last words.
I hope all of you can hear me. Staff, thank you so much. You did a wonderful job, and thank you for.
Thank you.
I think you gave our audience a good trip through Runaway Creek and all that it offers, and the habitat there that's so compatible with birds obviously fosters so much wildlife, and that's the reason that we're all working so hard to protect it. It's a pretty special place. I remember the second time I was there, standing on a karst hill and saying to my husband, "Is this where I need to be to feel really alive?" Little did I know where life was going to lead me beyond that. But so our purpose is to protect that property, and as was mentioned, there's infringement from all sides, and we're working with other organizations to protect that whole corridor that's so important in Belize for the movement of wildlife. So thank you so much for coming and listening, and I put some information on the back table. We are a nonprofit. We would love it if you wanted to support us. It would be amazing. And if you're interested, Danny and I take groups to Belize. We can customize them to whatever you're interested in and do whatever we want. And we go in the inland to Eco Lodge. We go to a research center where we stay. We visit Runaway Creek, and we can accommodate any kind of movement that you have. Our staff is amazing. So I invite you to look at what we brought, and thank you for coming. And again, I'd love to take you to Runaway Creek, so let me know. All right, thanks, Lenny.
That was amazing. Would you be willing to answer some questions?
Sure, the staff's still there too. They can answer it better than I can.
All right, maybe we have the lights on. So if you'd like to go ahead and ask a question, raise your hand. If you wouldn't mind coming up, or we could try to.
I was really impressed with two things. One is, both are questions. One is, why are we seeing the mammals utilize the caves? What special environmental things going on? And then the second thing that occurred to me, we saw a lot of mammals in trees, or confined to trees, or largely in a tree climate. They must depend on a continuous forest cover. And if there's, I don't know, windstorms or logging, there's maybe there's a threat to the forest cover to be discontinuous and making it more difficult for those animals to move around.
I can probably answer one of the caves. The animals use the caves for shelter. They traverse, they bring prey in there. We find bones and feathers and all kinds of evidence that they have brought prey into the caves. They use, a lot of our caves are tunnels, so they use them as paths to get from one part of the property to another. And as far as your question about mammals and animals in trees, and I'm not sure I'm addressing exactly what you asked, but we have huge wildfires and huge hurricanes, and the mammals are driven out of the trees. And one case is howler monkeys that were at Runaway Creek for years, but after 2 hurricanes ago, their food source was wrapped out, was completely wiped out. And they do come to the ground hardly ever, but we had an opportunity to reintroduce some rehabilitated howler monkeys onto the property 2 years ago, which just to me was the climax of what we've been doing to introduce that threatened species. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but the caves are definitely used by a variety because we have field cameras everywhere. We know that.
Yeah, Cindy, so Mike online here is asking, are there opportunities for tourism without damaging the environment?
Yes, we keep our. We keep our footprint on the property very small. We take very few people. We let the trails grow over, and we are constantly patrolling for poaching and keeping people off of the property. So our goal as conservationists is to learn, research, introduce other people to the importance of what we're doing and to have as little impact on the property as we possibly can.
Any other questions in the room?
I'm curious how likely you are to see any of what we saw tonight, or if the birds are there this time of year and then the flowers are another time of year, or if you go one particular month, are you likely to get your fill?
So I'll just say, in case the folks on the phone couldn't hear and Zoom, wondering what time of year you see different types of plants and animals and birds that we saw on the presentation.
Well, every time I've been there, I've seen something different, and there are times of year that are better to go back to. Okay, to visit Belize than others because of the weather. I mean, it's tropical and it differs a lot, Libby. The flowers bloom. One of those orchids, as Ray mentioned, blooms all year round. Others bloom very, very seldom. As far as seeing animals, I think that's one thing people need to understand about Belize. It's not like going on a safari where you see a lot of animals. A lot of these animals are nocturnal or they're very shy. But we have, I think, over 30 cameras on the property right now. So we check those cards to see what might have been there just a few hours before you pass through. We were in a cave once and we looked at the card in the laptop, and there'd been a jaguar there 3 hours before we'd been there. So oh, the birds. Yeah, the birds are the migratory birds are there probably best in November through January. Danny, help me. Yeah, and into March. And that's the best time. That's when we do a lot of our mist netting and bird banding. And so I don't know if I answered that very well. And we have staff up there still. They disappeared. They could answer it better. Yeah, I'm going to share quickly. How are we doing on time here? We almost end.
I think we're going to have a couple more questions,
go ahead.
maybe.
Go ahead.
So there's one question about the recording on the website, and this will be on the website. A lot of our recordings are on there. And we'll also make sure there's links to your foundation there. There's a question from Mark about, is the national government eager to cooperate with private foundations like yours to promote wildlife corridors?
Belize is probably one of the most conservation. Oh, I see something.
Yeah, you can see yourself up there.
One of the most conservation 35% of the country is in protected status, whether it be private or government protected. There was we have a good friend named Al McKay, and she was a professor at the University of Belize. She's kind of a conservation head in the whole country, and she works diligently with the country to promote conservation, and it's been quite successful. Politics, of course, every time a regime changes, you might have a less friendly person in power, but yes, it's a country that really works hard to protect what's there, but it's always a battle, always a battle.
Maybe two more questions. Any questions in the room?
I wanted to know, are they still trying to mine the area, or is it now thoroughly protected, or is that going to be an ongoing battle?
there's mining going on right next to us and all over. Yes, it's still being mined. And it's as the rest of the world. I mean, the balance between those who want profit and those who want to protect is ongoing. But we have mines driving up to the property. You can see mining on some of the car seals have been defaced almost completely, which is hard to watch. We're doing our best to protect those 6,000 acres, but can't do much more than that.
Is there a way that you track or have decided or studied how the biodiversity has maybe decreased, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, a lot of, we've lost so many organisms, creatures of all types, especially in the United States, and I know the diversity is much higher where in Belize, and is there a sort of an estimate that they give of biodiversity loss?
All I can say is I don't know the answer to that question, but it's important, and it would be interesting just on our own little piece of property to, even if it were not a scientific study, just our staff members that have been there 18 and 20 years, just to tell us what they notice. Climate change is a big problem. We've had drought, which was never there before. We've had more fires. We had to actually, which is completely against conservation, we dragged some big tubs out onto the pine savanna because we had animals dying all over the place where there were usually wetlands. So you don't want to interfere, but sometimes your heart just can't resist trying to make a difference.
All right, well, let's all give Cindy and her team, Danny, a round of applause.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, and just a huge thank you. How neat it is to hear from a team of people doing all this stuff. It's just both on Zoom and in person. Thank you for coming. And thank you for our members and participants on Zoom, and for everybody here tonight. Don't forget, there's still books over there. If you're in person, there's still drinks, and there's still signups and brochures and such over there as well. And please, if you're on Zoom and have questions, feel free to jump on our website and send us a message. So thanks, everyone. Good night.
Happy holidays. Thanks, guys. Great job.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you too.
Yeah,
All right.
you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
You're
night.
welcome.
Amazing presentation.
Right.